So good morning, everyone. Good to be here this morning. Non-duality is real. So many teachers will say reality is a tough subject if we try to think about it. And that's been my experience. It still is my experience. But I think one thing we can chew on is if it's reality, it's present here and now. And like Ty says, the address of happiness is the present, ever present here and now. Probably not going to follow real closely most of the specific things he talked about in this chapter. I think it's a very good chapter. It's just my language, my interpretation's a little different here and there. We don't disagree on anything. But one thing he did say is, in addressing all the differences we encounter in this life, is we need to have an open and flexible attitude towards that. And he warns us against using the idea of non-duality or oneness as sort of a defense against our fears or uncontrollable desires about how we deal with all the differences we encounter in our life. So I'm going to bring in a slightly different language, parts of a different language, Advaita Vedanta non-dual Advaita non-dual philosophy, which is basically Zen philosophy with a slightly different language. The spirit is very much the same, but it kind of, I think when we have that open attitude, shift our perspective a little bit, it can help us open up to deeper insights and embody those insights in a different way. And then, give it away and not stay stuck in any of the insights. But anyway, I was talking a few years ago with a friend of mine who's a senior Buddhist teacher. And I was telling her about how Advaita non-dual philosophy is the same as Zen. And she goes, well, what is it, Advaita non-dual exactly? And I had never really been asked that before. And I said, well, there's not much to know about it. Not one, not two, which Suzuki Roshi talks about in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Not one, not two. And so that's pointing, which Ben is also pointing to in the chapter, is we're letting go of the grasping of all ideas. So we're moving, in a way, we're moving beyond the confines of all ideas of oneness or differentiation or oneness and two-ness. So we just use a negative connotation, not one, not two, because we can get stuck on ideas of one or two, but to just not try to define it because it's not perceivable or describable. So what we want to do is, what is our real experience of reality? When we say it's here and now, there's a little exchange from the non-dual Vedanta master, Nisargadatta, with a student of his in this book that I've been studying for many years. And Nisargadatta says, enjoyment and pain are states of mind. They come and go. Their very impermanence make them perceivable. You cannot be conscious of what does not change. All consciousness is consciousness of change. That's the proof of impermanence, or the truth of impermanence. It's not a conceptual proof. It's just our experience. But the very perception of change, does it not necessitate a changeless background? So a changeless background, maybe you could say, is just our awareness of being present here. So there's a little experiential exercise he goes through with his student here. So the student says, the memory of the last state, in other words, the memory of the past, compared to the actuality of our present state, gives the experience of change. And so Nisargadatta says, between the remembrance, or the remembered and the actual state, there is a basic difference, which can be observed from moment to moment. At no point in time is the actual the remembered. Between the two, there is a difference in kind, not merely in intensity. So he's here talking about the actual. The actual is the same as the real. In other words, the actual is what's actually here. The real is what's actually here, right? Present right now. We can't describe it or perceive it as an object of our mind, but it's our reality. It's our presence. It's also our shared presence. At no point of time is the actual the remembered, although they don't differ in substance. But between the two, there is a difference in kind, not merely in intensity. The actual is unmistakably so. By no effort or will or imagination can you interchange the two. Now, what is it that gives this unique quality to the actual or to the real? And the student says, the actual is real, while there is a good deal of uncertainty about the remembered. And so Nisargadatta says, that's right, but why is that? A moment back, the remembered was actual. In other words, what we thought of a moment ago was actual. In a moment, the actual will be the remembered. What makes the actual unique? Obviously, it is our sense of being present. In memory and anticipation, there is a clear feeling that it is a mental state under observation. So when we are present right here now, we observe the remembered or the anticipated, or our actual experience of the past or projections into the future. We observe that, right? They're always the past and the imagined future are present experiences. They're only here now. So there's a clear, in memory and anticipation, there's a clear feeling that it is a mental state under observation, while in the actual, the feeling is of being present and aware. And then the student says, yes, I can see. It is awareness that makes the difference between the actual and the remembered. One thinks of the past or future, but one is always present now. So for me, that just observing that, and then thinking about it as kind of a koan, for many years. There's more and more of an embodied experience of the difference between the actual, the real, and our experience of thinking about our experience, or just thinking of thinking or non-thinking or whatever you want to call it. There's a sense of how here now doesn't have duration. It's just ever present. So for me, that's non-duality is real. And that's the essence of this chapter. So what is existence? To label something is to separate it out. Rupert Spira has a definition. I don't want to get I'm going to move away from the theoretical here pretty quick. But Rupert Spira has a definition of existence. The Latin word is exteria. I can't even pronounce it right, but it means to stand out. So when we separate things out, when we try to label things, we're separating them from reality. But in reality, in our real experience, like in the actual and the remembered, the ideas of actual and remembered are just reflections of the ever-present awareness, mental states under observation, like they talked about. So this is a way when we can embody the fluidity of impermanence. When we embody that, we begin to embody our own fluidity. We're not a separate body mind. We're not static. We're just moving, And even our sense organs are always moving, changing. There's no real perceivable or describable essence to them. So when we catch ourselves trying to grasp our experience or turn away from our experience, if we train in just being present, we begin to open up space around our sense of being present all the time. So the good news is the ever-present never leaves, right? So when Nisargadatta talks about that unchanging background, it's not really the background, it's not really the foreground, it's all pervasive, here now, ever present, timeless. But it's very alive. And most of the time, we feel the aliveness in the manifestation of our feelings, of our thoughts, that we grab onto or turn away from. But when we practice just being present with them, we're learning a lesson that things are in essence ungraspable, that our attempts to grasp things are attempts. Our attempts to turn away from this reality are attempts, but we never leave. We've never had, if we look deeply, as Tai says, we've never had the experience of being, beginning or ending. Being doesn't come and go. So I still, again, try to practice this with the paramitas. Being generous to my attempts to grasp. Being generous, patient, compassionate. Being careful. Try to be mindful, even though a lot of my memory cells are now floating down the cosmic stream. That's okay, just the way it is. So being is here. We're all here. So talking about this, for me, it's more and more not conceptual certainty, but just reality of our being shared. So we talk about our shared being. Here it is. Here we are. Don't grab, give it all away, as Reb says. Make offerings. To not grasp and not turn away is to offer all of our experience to our shared being in that intimate, and that's the most intimate, not knowing what it is most intimate. So the way we can be the most intimate with our experience and with others and express our shared being is this practice of just being present. And the deeper the sense of unity, the deeper we have of the realization of the harmony between sameness and difference, which sparks our creativity. And we cultivate the freedom of movement to and from all experience. And that's how we can deeply engage and help others move away from their suffering. So I've talked enough.
Thank you, Roger. The topic of non-duality has always been a little like brain racking for me, and and I appreciate this invitation to just be present, because I am beginning to, it talks about using clever words. There are no words really to describe it. It's just realizing it. And there are moments when I really realize it. And it's also comforting, recognizing that, I am not doing anything. And I'm coming to that more and more these days. And it's offering a place of comfort for me. That it's not me doing anything, and we're all in this together and all connected and supported. And often I forget that. And so it's good for me to just be reminded of that it's all here and now. And we talk about impermanence, but I was thinking that with the whole idea of non-duality, I guess impermanence is permanent. It's just it's one and the same. It's permanent. This is it. There is nothing else but this. So every now and then I have this, I guess, glance or little insight, just for that moment, and it's like this is it. This is it right here, right now. And I guess, as you said, it's the whole idea of the thought, the imagination, thinking about, well, what am I going to do tomorrow? Where am I going to go? How am I going to live? How am I going to survive? All of that. And when I let go of that and just take this breath, like, this is it, I'm okay right here, right now. And then, of course, the I is not even here. So I just can't even think about it anymore. I just, as I say, it's, that's samadhi in zazen, and I get that now. It's not a thought process, it's not something to think about. It's just experiencing being here and now with whatever is happening in my body, whatever is happening around me, just being here and now. So, thank you.
Yeah, there is that old saying, I think, I don't know if it's particularly peculiar to Zen, but in not being the doer, nothing is left undone. So, yeah.
And yet we still have to do, still have to clean the house, cook the food.
Yeah.
So it's
but
I don't know, the resignation, like, okay, this is it, just do what I have to do, move the next step.
And be kind to the resignation, and which kind of feels deadening sometimes. For me, being resigned feels deadening. But and be kind to the small I. Because there's that saying that if you leave your thoughts alone, they'll leave you alone. You could also say it, if you leave your ego alone, it'll leave you alone. We don't have to reject it, just see that it's not important.
Yeah. It's a practice. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. Your wisdom is great as usual. Your extensive training and reading is good for the rest of us too. Today's the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz camp 80 years ago today. It's a big deal. I was thinking about that earlier today as I was sitting this morning. And being present means being present to what is and not looking away from it and not wanting to be otherwise, not wanting to get out of it, you know. And that's going to be something that we have to really think about in the weeks and months upcoming until this whole thing, our whole situation implodes by some internal contradiction, which is inside of it, driving it right now. So for us to realize it's not two, it's not one, but it's our experience and it's me and it's here. And to be awake and to be present is really hard. You know, my impulse is to not be present right now, is to live in fantasy land, is to read Sherlock Holmes and play my guitar and not look. But to be present means to really be awake and aware of all the things in condition and our connection to all the beings. Not two, not one means that I'm not different than the Mexicans and the immigrants and the LGBT people and the Jews and everyone else, and so people of color. So just to really be I really have to be awake, and courage is going to be called for us too. We're going to be called to be courageous. You know? That's going to be called on us, and we can't. In the past, we have failed as Americans many times. Just a little political speech on my part, but just to be present, to be awake, and to be aware. So, thank you, Roger.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc.
I was trying to follow that and I understand we usually relate to each other as concepts, and what I'm experiencing is anxiety of not being able to grasp onto something, that everything is constantly changing. And I feel fear of letting go. And I would like to understand no birth and no death as it really is. I understand that I'm afraid of letting go of the small self. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not alone in that, Donna. That's another thing we're all in together, is the being afraid of letting go.
That's very reassuring.
But we need to make it conscious, and that's what the practice does for us. If we stay with it, makes us aware.
When you say the practice, are you talking specifically about meditating, Roger?
Mm-hmm. And bringing the spirit of the meditation of being present, not grasping, not turning away, contemplating, asking, doubting, questioning, living, feeling. Sometimes I feel kind of deadened when I go into the abstract stuff, but it can be illuminating if we're giving it away and we're offering it from an open space. That's what I feel like I'm doing better than I used to anyway.
Well, I like to experience the oneness and to not have this continual anxiety, which I think it's all fear of death, ultimately, which is letting go. But letting go is not death. That just occurred to me.
Mm-hmm. And one question we can ask is, in our anxiety, is it not just our idea, which we don't know what it is. We don't know what our ideas are made of or where they come from. But isn't not just our idea that our anxiety is somehow not expressing the oneness? If there's only the oneness, there's nothing else to express.
Right.
So even our anxiety, that's the basis of being kind to our anxiety, because it's expressing, well, it's the wanting, the wishing for compassion, but it's also expressing the oneness.
Well, I realize compassion, when I'm out doing whatever I'm doing, I see all the people limping in wheelchairs and just all the suffering, and people that I know have conditions